I'm a 24-year-old woman, and for as long as I can remember, my family life has been complicated. I grew up in a middle-class household with my parents and my younger sister, Leah, who's 22 now. If you've ever heard the term golden child, you already know where this is going. Leah was always the favorite, and no one even tried to hide it. Growing up, I had to follow a long list of rules. No skipping curfews, no bad grades, no talking back. And if I messed up, there were always consequences. But Leah? She was untouchable. She'd stay out past midnight, shrugging off the rules, and if she got caught, she'd just flash her innocent smile, and my parents would let it slide. She wrecked our dad's car once when she was 17, and instead of grounding her, they ended up buying her a new one. Meanwhile, I was still saving up for a second-hand bike. In college, Leah's behavior escalated. She cheated on assignments, which I found out when one of her professors emailed me by mistake, thinking I was her. She had used my name to smooth over one of her plagiarism scandals. When her grades tanked one semester, she convinced our parents it was because of mental stress. They not only paid for her to retake all her classes, but also booked her a 2-week vacation to recover. I, on the other hand, worked 2 jobs to cover my own tuition. It didn't stop there. Leah had a knack for stirring up drama with her friends and then calling me to fix things. I'd find myself making apologies on her behalf, smoothing things over with people she'd hurt. By the time I realized how often this was happening, it had already become a pattern. Leah caused chaos, and I was the one cleaning it up. The breaking point came recently when Leah got hired at the same company I work for. My parents had pulled some strings with a family friend to get her the job, even though she had no relevant experience. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured I'd keep my head down and focus on my own work. That plan didn't last long. From the moment Leah started, she acted like she owned the place. She dropped our family connection to everyone who would listen and made sure they all knew we were sisters. At first, it was just little things, like expecting me to show her how to do everything even though we weren't on the same team. But it escalated fast. Leah started giving me orders, telling people I was slacking off, and hinting that she could report me for not being a team player. She even started taking credit for my work in meetings. Then came the big blow. I was up for a promotion, a huge step in my career, and Leah managed to derail it. She made a massive mistake on one of her assignments and pinned it on me. When our boss called us in to discuss it, Leah had all these crocodile tears, claiming she was overwhelmed and that I had promised to help her but didn't. I tried to explain my side, but my boss didn't seem convinced. The promotion went to someone else, and Leah walked away without a scratch. When I brought this up with my parents, hoping for at least a little understanding, they immediately took Leah's side. They told me I should be supporting my sister instead of tearing her down. But according to them, I was jealous of her success, and they couldn't believe I'd stooped so low. That was the moment I realized I couldn't keep playing this game. I started paying closer attention to what Leah was doing at work. I noticed she was falsifying reports to make herself look better and blaming others when things went wrong. She wasn't just sabotaging me, she was messing with other coworkers too. That's when I decided enough was enough. I started documenting everything: emails, timestamps, witness statements. I even confided in a trusted coworker, someone I knew would back me up if things got messy. Leah didn't make it hard to gather evidence. She was so arrogant that she bragged about her manipulations in the break room. She thought she was untouchable. Leah's arrogance reached new heights during a team meeting. In front of everyone, she criticized me for a project delay, something that was entirely her fault. She laughed it off like it was a joke, but I could see the smirks from some of my coworkers. She thought she had me cornered. The last straw came when Leah accidentally left my name on a fraudulent report, framing me for her mistakes. It was the perfect setup, but what she didn't know was that I had already been documenting her every move. I had all the proof I needed. That night, I stayed late at the office, going over my evidence and making sure everything was in order. The next morning, I submitted a detailed report to HR. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear: I wasn't going to be Leah's scapegoat anymore. Update 1. After submitting the report to HR, I wasn't sure what to expect. The documentation included emails, timestamps, screenshots of her tampering with documents, and even statements from coworkers who had witnessed her manipulative behavior. I knew it was solid, but I didn't know how seriously HR would take it. A day later, I received an email confirming they had opened an investigation and would handle everything discreetly. They assured me my identity would remain confidential during the process. Leah, meanwhile, had no clue anything was happening behind the scenes. She carried on as if she were untouchable, laughing and bragging in the break room about how easy it was to stay ahead in the company. She even joked about how her connections meant she didn't have to worry about being held accountable. Coworkers who had once seemed indifferent to her antics were now avoiding her altogether. She didn't notice. Her overconfidence was helping HR more than anything. She was making their job easy by leaving a trail of evidence wherever she went. HR worked quickly. They coordinated with it to set up a digital audit trail, something I had suggested when I submitted the initial report. It didn't take long for them to find what they were looking for. Leah was caught red-handed falsifying another report. She had edited the numbers to make herself look better while shifting blame for the mistakes to a junior team member. The audit showed everything: the timestamps, her login credentials, and the specific changes she made. HR now had undeniable proof. The next day, Leah was called into a meeting with HR. She started into the conference room as if it were just another routine check-in. I later heard from a coworker who saw her on the way in that she was smiling, confident as ever. That confidence didn't last long. HR had prepared everything, from the audit logs to witness statements. They laid it all out for her. Leah's smug demeanor disappeared as she realized the extent of the evidence against her. When confronted, Leah tried to shift the blame. She claimed she had been pressured into falsifying the reports, hinting that I was the one who pushed her to do it. She even threw in a few crocodile tears for good measure. But HR wasn't buying it. They had already spoken to me and several other employees, all of whom corroborated the real story. The audit logs didn't lie either. There was no way out for Leah. HR placed Leah on immediate suspension pending further investigation. The news spread quickly around the office. People who had once been wary of getting involved started to open up about their experiences with Leah. They shared stories of her lies, manipulation, and attempts to sabotage others. For the first time since Leah started working there, I felt like the tide was turning. When my parents heard about Leah's suspension, their reaction was exactly what I expected. They were furious, not at Leah, but at me. In their eyes, I should have protected her, even if she was in the wrong. They called me selfish and accused me of ruining her career. My mom even went as far as to say that I was letting jealousy cloud my judgment. I didn't bother arguing. I'd spent years trying to reason with them, and it never worked. This time, I let their words roll off my back. Leah called me that evening. Her voice was full of desperation. She accused me of betraying her and begged me to talk to HR on her behalf. She wanted me to tell them it was all a misunderstanding or that I had misunderstood her actions. I let her talk, listening to excuse after excuse. Then I reminded her of all the times she had sabotaged me, stolen my credit, and left me to clean up her messes. This time, I wasn't going to save her. I hung up before she could argue. The days following her suspension felt surreal. Coworkers who had kept their distance started to approach me. Some apologized for believing Leah's lies. Others shared their relief that someone had finally stood up to her. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could focus on my work without constantly looking over my shoulder. A week later, HR called me for an update. They thanked me for my cooperation and confirmed that Leah's behavior would likely lead to her termination. They also assured me that the company would take steps to ensure this kind of situation didn't happen again. It was a bittersweet moment. I was relieved to know the truth was finally coming out, but I also knew this would permanently change my relationship with my family. I haven't spoken to Leah since that phone call, and my parents are still furious. They've made it clear they think I should have handled things differently, but I'm done trying to meet their impossible expectations. For the first time, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground, even if it means standing alone. Update 2. It didn't take long after Leah's suspension for HR to conclude their investigation. A week later, an official announcement was made. Leah was terminated for misconduct. The email from HR didn't go into too much detail, but everyone knew what had happened. Word spread like wildfire throughout the company, and Leah's reputation was in shambles. People who used to tolerate her or avoid confrontation were now openly sharing their frustrations about her time at the company. Meanwhile, my parents were livid. They called me nonstop, demanding to know why I had ruined Leah's career. According to them, I should have worked things out privately or helped her fix the situation. My mom even accused me of being vindictive and claimed I was jealous of Leah's success. They completely ignored the fact that Leah had sabotaged me, stolen credit for my work, and manipulated her way into her position. To them, none of that mattered. I didn't argue with them. I was done trying to justify myself. Leah's termination created a domino effect in her life. She began applying for jobs almost immediately but hit roadblock after roadblock. Her former coworkers weren't shy about giving honest references, and the nature of her firing wasn't exactly easy to explain away. Every lead she had fell through. Within a month, she was openly complaining about being blacklisted and blamed me for her inability to find work. That's when Leah started a new campaign of manipulation. She reached out to mutual friends and acquaintances, spinning a story about how I had plotted against her out of jealousy. She painted herself as the victim of my scheming, claiming that I had sabotaged her career because I couldn't handle her success. At first, a few people bought into her narrative. I even had 1 or 2 old friends reach out, asking me to explain my side of the story. But once I laid out the facts, including screenshots and emails, they quickly realized who was telling the truth. Leah's lies were unraveling faster than she could spin them. As Leah's social circle shrank, her desperation grew. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was shocked to see her standing there, looking disheveled and on the verge of tears. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She launched straight into a plea for financial help, claiming she was on the verge of being evicted. She tried to guilt me, bringing up our shared history and how family is supposed to help each other. I didn't let her guilt trip me. Instead, I confronted her about everything she had done, not just at work, but throughout our lives. I reminded her of all the times I had cleaned up her messes, taken the blame for her mistakes, and sacrificed my own opportunities to help her. I told her this was her chance to take responsibility for her actions and grow from the experience. She didn't like that answer. She stormed off, muttering something about me turning everyone against her. The fallout didn't end there. My parents called the next day, furious that I had refused to help Leah. They insisted it was my duty to support her financially until she could get back on her feet. When I refused, they gave me an ultimatum: either help Leah, or they would cut me off from the family. I told them I wouldn't jeopardize my own stability for someone who had spent years undermining me. True to their word, they stopped calling after that. With Leah gone, things at work took a turn for the better. My coworkers, who had once kept their distance because of Leah's influence, started warming up to me. A few even apologized for believing her lies. My reputation improved, and I felt like I could finally focus on my career without the constant shadow of Leah's manipulation hanging over me. Leah, however, wasn't done trying to control the narrative. She turned to social media, posting vague but pointed comments about being betrayed by someone she thought she could trust. In some posts, she outright accused me of sabotaging her life and destroying her career, but her attempts to play the victim backfired. People who had worked with her started commenting on her posts, calling her out for her behavior. The backlash was swift, and Leah eventually deleted most of her posts. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. Leah's influence was fading, and I was no longer the scapegoat in her life. People were seeing her for who she really was, and I didn't have to defend myself anymore. It was a moment of clarity. I realized I didn't need my parents' approval or Leah's validation to move forward. I was finally free from her shadow. Update 3. The fallout with Leah had barely settled when my parents decided to escalate things. One afternoon, they showed up at my workplace unannounced. I found out when my manager pulled me aside, looking concerned. My parents were in the lobby, demanding to speak with me. They were loud enough that several coworkers noticed, and it was clear they weren't leaving without a scene. Security and HR got involved quickly. They approached my parents and politely but firmly asked them to leave, explaining that personal matters shouldn't be brought into the workplace. My parents tried to argue, claiming it was urgent family business, but the security team didn't budge. They were escorted out, though not before leaving behind some pointed comments about how disrespectful I was being. Afterward, HR called me in to ensure I was okay, and to remind me that further disruptions wouldn't be tolerated. It was humiliating, but it also made me more determined to set boundaries. That evening, I called my parents and made it clear they were never to show up at my workplace again. I told them if they continued to interfere, I'd have no choice but to cut contact. They didn't take it well, accusing me of being ungrateful and turning my back on family. Still, I stood firm. Meanwhile, Leah wasn't done scheming. She began reaching out to former coworkers, claiming to have information about me. She painted herself as the victim, saying I had set her up at work and ruined her career out of jealousy. But her attempts to sabotage me fell flat. My coworkers informed me of her messages and dismissed them as desperate lies. Several even joked about how ridiculous her claims were. Leah's reputation was so damaged by that point that no one took her seriously. A few weeks later, my parents arranged a family dinner. They didn't tell me Leah would be there. I arrived expecting a quiet meal, only to find Leah sitting at the table, looking smug. It was clear they had planned this as some kind of intervention. My parents started in right away, saying Leah deserved an apology and that I needed to fix the family dynamic. Leah chimed in, accusing me of ruining her future and turning everyone against her. I stayed calm and brought up the facts. I listed every instance where Leah had sabotaged me at work and showed my parents some of the evidence I had shared with HR. They dismissed it as irrelevant, saying it didn't matter because families should forgive and forget. I told them I wasn't interested in enabling Leah anymore. When it became clear they weren't willing to listen, I got up and left. I told them I wouldn't tolerate being guilted into cleaning up Leah's messes anymore. After that dinner, my parents gave me an ultimatum: apologize to Leah and offer financial support, or be disowned. I didn't hesitate. I told them if being part of the family meant enabling Leah's behavior, I was better off without them. True to their word, they stopped contacting me. I blocked them and Leah on all platforms, creating some much-needed space to focus on myself. Surprisingly, several extended family members reached out to me after hearing about the situation. They expressed support, saying they had seen similar patterns with Leah over the years but didn't want to get involved. Their solidarity was unexpected but appreciated. It made me realize that not everyone in the family saw things the way my parents did. With my parents and Leah out of the picture, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't experienced in years. The weight of their expectations and constant drama was gone. For the first time, I could focus on my own life without being dragged into their chaos. I started putting more energy into my career, my friendships, and my personal goals. Looking back, I realized how much the family dynamic had held me back. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I didn't need their approval to move forward. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Update 4. It didn't take long for Leah to find a new way to seek attention. She started an online fundraiser, claiming she had been wrongfully terminated and needed financial help to rebuild her life. The description was full of exaggerations and outright lies, painting her as a victim of a vindictive coworker me who had conspired to destroy her career. She even threw in some melodramatic language about how she was on the brink of losing everything, and how her mental health was at stake. At first, the fundraiser gained a little traction. A handful of people donated small amounts, and Leah shared the link across her social media platforms, begging for support. But it didn't take long for her former coworkers to catch wind of it. Several of them left comments exposing her lies, pointing out her history of misconduct and explaining the real reason for her termination. One even linked to a public article about professional ethics, indirectly calling Leah out. The backlash grew quickly. Donations dried up, and the comments section became a battleground of people calling her out versus a few defenders who didn't know the full story. The fundraiser ultimately failed. Leah only managed to raise a fraction of her goal, and most of the donations were paired with mocking comments. Some people donated a single dollar just to leave sarcastic remarks, like "here's to a fresh start, maybe try honesty this time." Leah deleted the fundraiser within a week, but not before screenshots of the comments circulated among mutual acquaintances. Her reputation, already in tatters, took another hit. Leah didn't take the failure well. She went on a public rant across her social media platforms, calling out certain people clearly aimed at me for being heartless and blaming me for sabotaging her fundraiser. Her posts were long and filled with self-pity, but they didn't garner much sympathy. Most people had already seen through her act, and her attempts to gain support only made her look more desperate. Meanwhile, my parents tried to turn this situation into another guilt trip. They reached out to extended family members, telling them I was being cruel to Leah and refusing to help her during her time of need. This backfired spectacularly. Many of my relatives already knew the truth about Leah's behavior and sided with me. Some even called out my parents for enabling her for so long. It was a small but satisfying victory. Leah's situation continued to spiral. She fell behind on her rent and was eventually evicted from her apartment. With no other options, she moved back in with my parents. This created new problems for them, as they were already struggling financially. Supporting Leah's lifestyle was expensive, and they were reluctant to cut back on their own spending. The strain began to show. They started complaining to anyone who would listen about how ungrateful I was for abandoning the family during such a difficult time. While all this was happening, my career was thriving. With Leah gone, my workplace had become a much more supportive environment. My hard work was finally being recognized, and I received a promotion that I had been working toward for months. It felt good to know that I could succeed on my own merit without anyone trying to undermine me. Leah wasn't ready to give up, though. She reached out to me claiming she had changed and wanted to make amends. She started off by sending long, apologetic messages, saying she regretted how things had turned out and that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. But it didn't take long for her true intentions to come out. She asked for money, framing it as a small loan to help her get back on her feet. She even hinted that supporting her financially would be a good way to heal the family. I didn't fall for it. I calmly reiterated the boundaries I had set and told her I wasn't interested in revisiting the past. Leah's tone changed immediately. She accused me of being selfish and spiteful, claiming I was enjoying her suffering. It was a familiar pattern. When manipulation didn't work, she resorted to blame. I ended the conversation and blocked her again. My parents didn't let it go, of course. They resumed their campaign of guilt, warning me that I would regret abandoning family someday. They even tried to rally mutual acquaintances to pressure me, but by this point, most people were tired of their drama. Leah's behavior had alienated so many people that she was running out of allies. As for me, I used this newfound peace to focus on myself. I started traveling, exploring places I'd always wanted to visit, but never had the freedom to before. I also began investing in my future, putting time and money into hobbies and skills that brought me joy. It was liberating to finally live without the constant weight of Leah and my parents pulling me down. Looking back, it's clear that Leah's downfall was entirely of her own making. Her manipulations, lies, and refusal to take accountability had finally caught up with her. For years, I had been the one cleaning up her messes, but now she was facing the consequences on her own. And I was finally free to move forward. Update 5. My parents' decision to continue supporting Leah financially had consequences they couldn't ignore for long. With Leah back at home and refusing to take responsibility for herself, the strain on their finances grew worse. Bills piled up, and their savings dwindled as they tried to maintain their lifestyle while covering Leah's expenses. It didn't help that Leah continued to demand more, expensive groceries, outings, and even the occasional online shopping spree. Within months, their debt had spiraled out of control, forcing them to sell their home and downsize to a much smaller place. Despite their worsening situation, Leah's behavior didn't change. She attempted to secure a few new job opportunities but burned bridges at every turn. Whether it was refusing to take direction, showing up late, or blaming others for her mistakes, the pattern remained the same. Her reputation in professional circles was so tarnished that word spread quickly, and no one was willing to give her a real chance. Instead of reflecting on her actions, Leah doubled down on her narrative of being a victim, blaming everyone but herself for her failures. Nearly a year passed without contact from my parents. Then, out of the blue, they reached out. The message was unusually cordial, apologizing for the way they had treated me and asking if we could talk. I was skeptical but agreed to hear them out. During the conversation, they admitted they had underestimated how much enabling Leah had cost them, financially and emotionally. They hinted at their struggles, asking if I could help them out just this once. I calmly declined, explaining that I couldn't jeopardize my own future to fix problems they had created. Leah's reaction to my refusal wasn't surprising. She found out through my parents and unleashed another tirade on social media, accusing me of being vindictive and holding grudges. Her posts were filled with the same tired narrative, but by now no one cared. Most of her followers were long gone, and the few who remained didn't engage. Her attempts to stir up sympathy fell flat. Amid all this, my extended family continued to be a source of unexpected support. Relatives who had once stayed out of the drama reached out to check on me and express their understanding. Some even shared their own stories of dealing with family members like Leah, reinforcing my decision to set boundaries. These connections became a source of comfort and reminded me that not all family relationships had to be toxic. Leah's downward spiral reached a new low when she was caught in another workplace scandal. She had managed to land a short-term contract through a family friend but quickly ran into trouble. According to mutual acquaintances, she was caught falsifying data again, leading to her immediate dismissal. This time, the story spread beyond her professional circle, cementing her reputation as unreliable. Meanwhile, my parents began to reflect on their years of enabling Leah. Although they never fully admitted their mistakes, they stopped defending her as fiercely as before. They also started pulling back on their financial support, realizing they couldn't continue to sacrifice their own stability for her. It was a small step, but it showed they were finally beginning to question their role in the situation. While all of this was unfolding, I hit a major milestone in my own life. I had been saving for years, and with Leah and my parents out of the picture, I was able to focus on my goals. I finally purchased my first home, a modest but beautiful place that felt like the ultimate symbol of my independence. It was a moment of pride and relief, knowing I had built this life on my own terms. Leah's social circle continued to dwindle. The more people saw through her manipulations, the lonelier she became. Even her staunchest defenders grew tired of her antics. She tried reaching out to old friends and coworkers, but most ignored her messages or politely declined to reconnect. It was clear she was running out of people to blame or manipulate. Eventually, my parents asked to meet again, this time framing it as a neutral conversation. They admitted they missed me and wanted to work on repairing our relationship. I agreed, but only under the condition that they acknowledge past wrongs and respect the boundaries I had set. The conversation was tense but productive. While some progress was made, I made it clear that Leah was not part of the equation. They reluctantly agreed. Though I maintained a cautious relationship with my parents, I kept my distance from Leah entirely. There was no part of me that felt obligated to let her back into my life. Instead, I focused on moving forward. At work, I used my experiences to mentor younger coworkers, sharing the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for oneself. Looking back, I realized Leah's downfall wasn't my doing. It was her refusal to change that brought her here. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle of enabling her and seeking my parents' approval. Breaking free wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in my life, I felt a deep sense of closure. I had finally escaped Leah's shadow and the toxic family dynamic that had once held me back, and I knew I was stronger for it.